Welcome to episode 18 of CharleChats, the Ecommerce Podcast. My name's Nick. I'm the founder of Charle, a Shopify agency based here in London, and I'm so excited to welcome you to our home for some very open, honest, and real conversations with some absolute A players in e-commerce right now. So, without further ado, let's do this. $10 million in sales and now profitable on the path to being a £100 million business. Rob, what is the story of Coat Paints?
Yeah, I mean, no one knows how long that road is, but hopefully not too long. Yeah, we're gunning for it. We're working in a very big market. We're very excited. But yeah, relatively humble beginning. So myself and my co-founder Rob.
Two Robs.
I know, keeps it easy.
That must get confusing.
Easy or difficult, depending on how
Do you share an email address?
We did originally.
Did you really?
Yeah, when we first started the business, we had Rob at Coat Paints, and like either one of us could handle that. But yeah, that was kind of it feels like a long time ago now, but just the two of us in a roll-up, very unglamorous unit over in Camberley in Surrey. Little known centre of the paint universe. It's not, but that's kind of where we ended up.
It is now.
It is now. But yeah, that's kind of where it started. And I'd known Rob for about 15 years. We'd kind of interned together back at BMW, and he went into paint. This is the nutshell version. He went into paint. I was in kind of growth and marketing, kind of more of a brand background. And yeah, I think it was probably idea 20 at the pub that we'd gone through over 15 years worth of brainstorming. And yeah, Coat was born out of a few things really, but the nutshell ones are: everybody hates going to the DIY store. So like ticking the box of we can make that better. We can make that experience better. Paint and kind of chemicals and that whole industry, big environmental kind of impact, overproduction, not unlike fashion, but that kind of production model. And thirdly, brand. We're very brandy people. Both Rob and myself kind of believe in the power of brand and what that means. And we saw the potential really for a challenger. Paint is a very old industry. There's lots of brands in there, lots of heritage, but actually where's the challenge, where's the newness and that kind of modernity? So those three things came together. It wasn't all in the pub. That was kind of the seed. And then we developed Coat from there. And like I say, it was four and a half years ago. The rest is very recent history, as I say, but yeah, going strong.
And did you and Rob know that you'd always have a business together?
I don't think so. We interned together, so we were called product assistants, I think, at BMW, which basically meant washing cars for about a year. So we got to know each other relatively well there.
Got good at cleaning cars as well.
Got good at cleaning cars, worked in marketing, and yeah, stayed friends. From that point, he went on to kind of do a lot of product roles in a lot of big American corporates and things. Latterly in a paint one. And I did a couple of bits after BMW, learned about venture capital in a very high growth business. And so we split off a bit. But I think our characters are quite, I don't know if they're similar or not, similar and different in a lot of ways. But we'd always discuss business. Rob studied entrepreneurship, I think. I did business. So we always, like a lot of people, I think, had those conversations. But yeah, I suppose it takes a little bit more than that to get you to actually, jack in the paycheck and go, we're going to do this. So yeah, we were pretty confident in our abilities to work together, I think, at that point.
And was there like a staggered approach to your launch in terms of like you guys working outside of your existing jobs to start building something? Or was it like, here we go, like, let's just go. We've got an idea. We're going to run with it and see what happens.
I think we're quite calculated in our risk taking. So I think we thought about it for a while. We did a lot of scoping out of stuff, particularly me. I mean, Rob was in a paint company, so very little he could actually do around that. So yeah, did a lot of research. I think probably started in the January, and I think by June we'd handed our notice in. So there's kind of 6 months of scoping of really getting under the skin of like, is this real? Is this an opportunity we want to pursue? And some of the more practical things. And then, yeah, June time, we jacked the jobs in. I was actually freelancing, so it was easier for me to do that. Also, I didn't have any children. Rob did. So there are like a few things kind of coming to play there. But we we were in COVID at the time. Remember that, like 2020, and
Feels like a distant fog now, doesn't it?
yeah, it's mad. So we holed up in actually what was Rob's dad's disused office for a few months, and it was crazy. Really, we set the business up without having a single like physical meeting with someone. So from suppliers in various places to actually getting branding, website built, that was all done kind of. It feels a bit like cabin fever now, but yeah, from one room over a few months' time. So
it's incredible what you can do.
Weird thinking about it now, but yeah, that was.
It is wild when you literally have a goal and you're like, we need to deliver this, and there's no other opportunity. I sometimes see it was like, even as businesses get bigger, they get way less efficient. You look at some of the earlier projects, how did we get that from like nothing to something alive so quickly? Because you have to, right?
Like that.
And you've got that founder energy. And
we had the energy. I think everybody was forced to do things on Zoom, which was unusual for a lot of like supply-led industries. So actually they had to move quite quickly as well to do stuff, or could move quickly because there was no, visit this, visit that. I was like, this is what it is. I think even now we look back at those early few months and, we conceived the brand there. So we still look back at pictures of our whiteboard and, the core brand, call it the brand egg. I don't even know if it's a thing, but like the core of the brand in the back, that's all exactly the same. So we occasionally kind of go back and we're like, oh yeah, this is our North Star. This is what we're doing. So it's really productive time putting those solid foundations down. Because I think a lot of the time when you're, I don't know if it's just me and Rob, but you tend to flip flop a lot on kind of your vision. You're like, well, should we be doing this? Should we be doing this? The world around you changes. But actually, yeah, we still go back to that first whiteboard and where we started.
And how did you fund like your first 6 to 12 months of getting it off the ground, right?
Yeah, I think that's probably, I think that's the biggest blocker to entrepreneurship for a lot of people, is thinking, how on earth do people do that, and how do you afford it? So ours is relatively basic. I had, from the January that I talked about to June, I'd saved enough to give myself a runway, to like give myself a period of time where I could go, actually, I don't need to earn a paycheck during this time.
Yeah.
That felt like a massive weight off. Once you take that away and you go, I've got a year's worth of basic income at that point. That was great. It's so freeing. And I think when you're in employment, certainly like you sort of get addicted to that monthly paycheck. It's really hard to cut that off. So did that. Rob's was more difficult. His family situation was different. He's got he only had 2 at the time. It's 3 kids. Obviously, main breadwinner in his house. So he did the same, but didn't have quite as long a runway. So it's a little bit more stressful for him. But within, I think, 6 months of that initial, maybe earlier, within 3-4 months of that initial kickoff, we did a kind of friends and family whip round. And I'm always nervous about saying that because it sounds like, there's lots of money in the family. It isn't. It's kind of 20, I think it was 25 of our friends and family all putting, a couple of grand of their savings. It's quite a lot of pressure going into this situation. But using SEIS, so using the tax schemes. So we got enough money to basically get ourselves a little unit in Camberley that I talked about earlier, a paint machine, which is like, or a couple of paint machines, like 10 grand, some stock, and start paying ourselves a small amount to kind of run the business for the following, I think it was 9 months or so after that point. So all of that money, if you like, was in stock, premises, and just sustaining the marketing over that initial period.
So this moment, whilst you say that, you had a bit of a runway, you've got a year's worth of cash before you're going to not have food on the table. But actually you've got a co-founder who also has a little bit of cash, but also has a family to feed. And now you've got the pressure of the family and friends of like, I imagine, was there a moment when you had kind of gone through that process where it felt very real now? Because actually it's like, the clock's ticking. We've now got to actually deliver on what we've promised our friends, our families, and ourselves. What was that moment like for you?
Constant. I mean, it's still there, frankly. Those guys are still on our cap table. My grandma's on our cap table. So like when you think about it like that, there was always that pressure, which a lot of people have said, oh, that must feel intense. I think it does, but at the same time, we were super confident, and I think our family clearly had faith in the both of us, and seen what we'd done before and gone, yeah, we think these guys can do it. So it was a mixture of feeling like pressure and also feeling like the wind beneath your sails, to be like, doing this for my grandma, like, let's get on with it, kind of thing. And arguably now, I wouldn't necessarily say this to kind of VCs, but having my grandma on the cap table is often more of a motivator to kind of do well than anything else, which probably plays well for everyone. But yeah, that Christmas with your aunties and uncles and your family asking about the business, particularly the first couple, where it was tough, and we'd taken on some VC and we were losing money at that point. And it's kind of you have to tell the story, and it's an odd dynamic in your family environment a little bit. But they never put that pressure on. I think that was us kind of more than anything.
And I imagine that's probably got a big part to play in your tremendous growth so far. In terms of,
so.
You see other businesses that straight out the door have been hugely funded, and money really isn't an issue for a very long time. And actually, I've seen, even in my career, see brands make quite reckless decisions when money is not when it's not an issue, because we can spend out on all the luxuries, have this, that, and the other. And actually, where is that driving force to push growth and push a profitable business, right? And there's nothing like your grandma at a Christmas dinner table to do that.
I'm quoting her. She's a best investor. She's like, I don't want it back. I'm like, okay, yeah, I'm sure, but like, but
that makes you want to give it even more.
I know.
So why paint? Like, paint, I feel like you'd be going up against big players. It's not like an industry that's full of small little players that you're all fighting. In my view, I mean, I'm not a paint expert, but if I was thinking of going into paint just off the market, I'd be like, I'm going to be going up against Dulux and all these big companies.
Yep.
Did it feel like you were a challenger brand fighting the big boys?
Yeah, I think that's kind of, if you ask Rob and I what our biggest motivator is, it's probably somewhere in what you just said. We like being the underdog. We like punching above our weight class. Like, that is quite a motivating thing. So I think we weren't intimidated by that. If anything, enthused by it, because it's such a huge market, and there's players in there that are the kind of really established. I think we looked at the market a lot, and like everybody should when they're starting a business, you evaluate it and go, do we want to play in this? I think you could convince yourself out of a lot of markets by having that kind of, there's big people in here, let's not do it type view. I think we always thought, okay, it's big, chunk it down and go, what are we trying to do here? And we're not trying to be Dulux, that's not where we're playing. We like the premium segment. That was kind of a big, going back to the brand point. So we always had this phrase of know your lane. So that's something we've said right from the beginning, know your lane and stay in it. And paint is such a huge and could be intimidating market to play in. You got to really know which bit you're going for. And then you shape kind of your proposition, your brand and everything around it. So we think we can build quite a big business in the premium segment. And that's kind of what we're going for.
Nice. What an exciting, because you don't see many challengers in this space. I mean, you probably see more now, because when you start looking into it, you start getting targeted by everything, and it's like, oh my God, there are loads of people here. But actually, in the grand scheme of things, if I were to ask somebody on the street, name some paint brands, there's only new ones coming, I bet most people would probably say no.
You got the behemoths, right? And then within our space, it's all kind of heritage. So we're kind of challenging that principle that you need heritage anymore. I think as a brand, telling a story is important, but actually having legacy is not as important as perhaps it was in the past. You can be relevant and connect with people on a different level. So we're targeting that space of the challenger, more sustainable, doing things differently. And the premium segment's where we saw it, and we looked at the brands out there, incredible, very strong kind of heritage premium brands with great products. But we were kind of looking at our own lives, and this is where when you start a business again, you've only really got yourself and your immediate knowledge pool to go. Is this a good idea? So like sample size of like 2. And we were like, we don't resonate with this kind of heritage thing. We're buying other we're buying Veja and Aesop and all these other kind of modern premium brands, but that doesn't exist in paint. And that was that's all we had at the start of we think that's missing, and we want to do that. So yeah, art and science, but more probably art at that point than anything else.
And how old is Coat Paints now?
So I'm going to say 4. So we officially launched kind of back end of 2020. So yeah, a little over 4 years old in our 4th year of trading.
And Rob, I'm going to ask you on a personal level, how has that journey truly been?
Yeah, good question. I mean, we always talk about the roller coaster internally, so I feel like the roller coaster emoji between me and Rob on WhatsApp is like frequently used because it does feel like highs and lows and not much in between, which can be rough on both sides. You're going from quite big swings of emotion all the time. I think over time, that's probably the one thing that we've both gotten much better at, is just managing change and being reactive without going off the rails, essentially. So it's been 4 years. I say 2 really, like, first bit is crazy exciting when it's just the 2 of us and we're like cracking on and getting stuff done. We're both very like task oriented, get stuff done. And then you start building the team and bringing in VC, and like a lot of dynamics change. So there's getting used to that. And then there's kind of ships in the Suez Canal and all sorts of other challenges going on, world economic crisis, like all this stuff's going on. And yeah, it's tough to deal with. And I think I go to a few kind of founder networks and stuff, and people are open about it a little bit more beyond the glamour of what you see on LinkedIn and how well everything's going. But I'd say we're enjoying it, but we've got much better at riding the roller coaster, shall we say.
And you say that you've got better at riding that roller coaster, and I really resonate to that story, because I remember in the early days of Charle, God, I'd be on the phone to like my best mate, and I'd be like, "Oh, this is going to shit! Like everything's breaking around me. Why did I do this? This is all failing."
It's fun, isn't it?
And then the next day, I'm like, "Oh wow, we've won this massive brand," and I'm like, "Oh my God, my life's changed again."
Yeah.
And I really resonate that with, once you almost have to hit rock bottom. To then go sky high again, and then rock bottom again, to start going, actually, and I don't know about you, but I found myself leveling myself out on the highs as much as I level myself out on the lows.
Yeah.
Can you tell me a little bit more about that roller coaster in the early days of the business?
I think it's hard, because what you just described of leveling out highs and lows, that is difficult for biologically for humans to do. So yeah, I remember one example of kind of early days, the way, because we were so passionate, and like there's all that pressure that we talked about earlier, but 2 tons of paint was delivered to my house, right outside. I live on a one-way street in West London. They just dropped pallets of paint outside my house. Jeez. And I remember my partner calling me going like, "There's paint outside and they won't take it away." And I remember just like slightly having a breakdown at that point, going like, I don't know how to deal with this. Like, I actually don't know how to move pallets of paint from outside my house, and kind of just flew into this kind of frenzy and stuff. And I can remember the emotion of that, like how it bubbles up and takes over. And that was when we were busy on a Saturday morning painting out samples, trying to make a Royal Mail deadline for sending stuff out. So that felt catastrophic at the time, and I can remember that being a moment of like, what, I don't want to do this. This is like going to kill me off, kind of thing. But over time, I mean, Rob and I believe in kind of coaching and therapy, and both of us have done that, and I think that's a huge part of how you learn those things. I don't think it's something. I mean, you probably can teach yourself through books and stuff, but sometimes it takes looking at someone else and having that feedback. So regulating emotions, kind of stopping and thinking and unpacking stuff without just flying off the handle into it, not just for ourselves, but also when you start building the team and how we interact and how we interact with the team. That's quite a big footprint. So if you're constantly flying off the handle and being emotional, that you can't run a team in a business like that. So I think we were forced into doing it, not only for that reason, but it's not sustainable. Like we couldn't have gone on with that way of reacting to things. So until it happens, you don't know, but how you react to it, we got coaches and we took it head on and went, we can't live like this. So yeah, I think we're both quite back to that pragmatic, task oriented thing. Like, this was a problem, this is how I'm not going to say fixed it, but this is how we intervened. And yeah, I think we are both much better.
And would you say that was your rock bottom in the journey of Coat Paint
No,
so
probably
far?
not. I was thinking that as like one example of where I just remember being very emotional about it. I probably used to be quite emotional about lots of things. One of our investors not following on in a following round. Like I remember being like, oh, that's it. Like everyone's going to think the business is awful because this investor not following. Like I remember that being a very low moment. There's endless kind of amounts of them. There are highs as well, without sounding like kind of too depressive about the whole thing. But yeah, there's you take everything to heart when it's your own business. It's so much of your time, your identity. There's lots of things in there. So yeah, I think it was just over time we experienced it and learned how to get out of it a little bit.
One thing I've really learned since even doing this podcast for the last 2 years is that founders, more commonly than I ever believed, will go through a period of really high and exciting and euphoria at the beginning of a business, and then that energy is coupled with the lowest of the lows. I mean, I probably had some of my darkest days through this business,
Yeah.
And similarly, went and had therapy, and actually having a third party to rationalize and building these skills as somebody that's growing any business, not just an e-commerce business, but growing skills like managing thoughts and rationalizing catastrophes and go, okay, there's 2 tons of paint outside my house. Is it the end of the world? Is the world going to end? Is the business going to stop working? And actually, but the thing is, when I know for me, there'd be challenges I'm getting faced with, or a member of staff would leave and I'll be like, oh my goodness, everyone's going to think we're awful or whatever. And actually it's all these death by 1,000 cuts, and suddenly you hit that kind of boiling point. And actually, as you said, you kind of learn to, the highs are still high and the lows are still low, but you still learn to regulate that wave of emotion and go, and like you said, be more pragmatic and go, right, this is a bit of a shitter. Or, if you're having a tough couple of months, we've been there, where you're like, even me and the team go, God, we've been punched a few times recently, haven't we? Like, this will end soon. It must do. The laws of averages says it has to. And all we can do is try our best and rationalise it. It's been very, very helpful.
That's Rob. You just reminded me of like my co-founder's favourite phrase is like, I'll be fine next week. Literally constantly. It's a great way of, it's sort of a great way of coping, but yeah, we've been saying that for 4 years basically. It's like it is relentless, but
you can only do what you can do. That's my number one saying, is I say it all the time. Well, look, I can do what I can do. Or I actually sometimes will voice. There's times where I'll be thinking about a few things when I'm like cooking my dinner in the kitchen. And it's almost like I talk, it sounds very sad, but I'm going to share it anyway. I'll talk to the universe and I'll go, look, I'm doing what I can do. What more do you want from me? Actually just rationalising that you can only control what you control. If I can't control it, I can't do anything about it. Sorry. Do whatever you need to do.
You kind of have to do that, right?
You do.
If you can't control it, there's no point getting stressed out about it.
So DTC for paint, big opportunity alongside...
I hope so. Think so, yeah.
Alongside creating something within the premium space of paint. Was that part of the initial strategy, or were you going to... Was the paint step 1 and D2C was step 2?
No, D2C... I suppose that's the enabler. Paint is the product. D2C is both the business model and the enabler to a lot of the kind of customer experience stuff we do. So we saw the opportunity in paint and D2C, probably in the way that others had seen it in other verticals, Warby Parker to glasses, Wild to whatever. That was and still is kind of core to what we believe the opportunity is. Paint is still transacted kind of 90% offline, so in stores and stuff. So we still see that as a massive opportunity. The brand, aside from being kind of brandy and motivated and inspired by that side of the business, premium brand, it's a relatively transactional thing to say, but we needed the margins to sustain the business model. So we kind of think at a lower price point, we'd either have to have a really rubbish product to get that kind of margin, or we couldn't sustain customer acquisition costs, fulfillment costs, all the bits, paint's heavy, all the bits in between. So I can't really remember how there's a bit of a chicken and egg situation going on there, but we definitely identified online before we delved into exactly branding and the kind of positioning and all that sort of stuff.
And Rob, just for clarity there, what you're referring to is that D2C would give you a bigger margin because you haven't got to give, say, retailers a margin.
Yes. Yeah. So the big, I suppose it's been a thing maybe probably even like 10 years ago now, but this idea that, we're going to cut out the middleman, we're going to sell to the consumer and retain more margin. That's kind of that's the goal, I suppose, or one of the core goals of a D2C business. But you have to offer the customer some benefit to that as well, clearly. So we want to sell premium grade, like high quality paint for less than what our competitors are doing. So there's a price advantage for the customer. There's an experience advantage for us being able to control everything really, from those initial touch points right through to the unboxing and the delivery and the product application. So yeah, that's why.
Untraditional in the sense of, if I think paint when I was younger, I'd think of my dad going down to the DIY store and looking at all these millions of cards of paint and then looking at machines that would like mix it and so on. And so it is really a unique proposition in the space, which I think is super exciting for you guys. How did you establish who your target was? Is it targeting on like Meta now is like, let Facebook do everything. But
I know, right? Yes.
I'm sure when you started, it was probably a lot more targeted, like who do we want to chase and who do we want to go after?
Yep.
So is that the same now? Are you chasing the same people you chased on day one?
It's a really good question. I think going back to that, when there's just two of you and you've got this hypothesis of like, this is what we want to do, you've only really got yourself. Well, no, I'll just speak about us. We only really had ourselves as kind of muses. So we're like, we think this brand's missing. We think going to the DIY store on the weekend is, soul destroying. Like we really just do have that kind of sample size. So you have to have some conviction in your own belief. I suppose as we've grown, we've challenged that because we've had more data. So back to your point, when we were running, me doing Facebook ads at the time and spending kind of a couple of quid a day targeting, this demographic in this very specific area and thinking that's what we're going at. I don't think it's changed a huge amount. I think we know more now as we've grown. I think the brand has matured for sure over that period. We've understood people's buying habits. We've understood their product preferences, things like that. But the fundamentals of kind of that sustainability minded, educated, aesthetics driven customer, I don't think that's changed very much at all. You can unpack the demographics of that when you start putting people in these boxes of types of customers, but the fundamentals of values I don't think has changed a huge amount in that time.
Has anything surprised you? Like if you could tell something about what your customer profile looks like now compared to what you thought it might have looked like in the early days? Is there anything like, oh my goodness, I never thought I'd be selling paint to you?
I think it's probably, I think we came out the blocks with like online. I think we were very much pitching at, we're an online player, and actually our strategy was we want to be the largest online player. That was kind of where we started. I think maybe over time we've realised that being online, okay, it's the core of our business model. It's our only channel. We don't sell anywhere else, so that's still very much alive. But people aren't buying us because we're online. I think that's maybe less so the customers change, but more our perception of what we're doing has changed. So people like the online experience. They shop online for lots of different things, but actually that's probably a supporting factor to them buying into, they like the colours and they like the speed of delivery and they like the sustainability. So I'd say we've more moved towards learnings of why our customers are buying us that isn't just because you're online than what we originally hypothesized, which was exactly that.
It's so interesting that you bring that point up. I've seen some other brands where they focus on, even in like their ad marketing, they'll focus on sometimes the abstract carrier of the business as opposed to just the main reason why someone wants to buy your product. So, from outside looking in, I'd probably want to buy your product because A, I like nice things. B, I like to feel like I've gone a little bit premium. Love Aesop soaps, for example, looks fancy. Yep. When I'm doing it, I feel like, wow, I'm really like made it in life.
Yeah.
But actually, if you went down a marketing campaign as like buy online, buy luxury paints online, actually probably that's not going to resonate with me because I don't care about whether I buy it online or not. What I care about is that I'm entering your brand world, which leads me quite nicely on to something you said a little bit earlier, which was that you and Rob were quite brandy people.
Yeah.
What does that mean? What does it mean to be a brandy person?
Yeah, really good question. I mean, I think it kind of, and it ties really nicely in with what you just said, because I suppose we've always said, unless you're brandy, unless you're building quite a distinctive brand, you're effectively a commodity. So brand is particularly in paint, which could be looked at as a commodity product. Unless we are really strong on brand, we risk just being, another wall covering, right? So you
do they like your colours? That's the end of it.
Exactly. Yeah. So you have to do more than that to tell a story, to connect with people properly. And being D2C, we sell directly to our customers, so we feel like we know them. We have the relationship with them. So being brandy not only was about, okay, we've got this hypothesis of a gap that we see, so that contemporary challenger. It then very quickly became about the product. So you make all these decisions in the early days, right? So where are we on quality? Are we here, or here? Where are we on price? Are we here or here? So everything comes together to make, I think, the business model work. So brand, be aspirational, stand out, be different in some way to other people, so you don't risk becoming a commodity. And then the premium positioning kind of ties into that, but it's also, like I said before, it's a margin piece. You can't make e-commerce is hard. You'll know, and a lot of people that you work with know. Customer acquisition is really hard, biggest cost on the P&L. So yeah, unless you've got that margin, it's really, really difficult. So there's again art and science to why we are where we are and where the brand is. But we both felt very strongly, and still do. We still oversee everything that kind of, it's like a little bit control freaky, but everything that goes out, we still like to look at, because we are so passionate that brand is where the value in our business is the most.
And in a conversation we had before filming today, you shared a frustration and an annoyance around
Sounds about right.
around the marketing approach that really splits out brand and performance marketing. And the continual debates we see online around, does brand marketing work? Is there any value in brand? Tell me your views on it.
I remember now. I'm just really bored of that debate, because I don't think we're discussing the right thing. And I say we, it's like a royal we, the world, whatever, the LinkedIn world is discussing the right thing. I think the way, we talk about brand marketing and performance marketing as if they are independent and channel specific. I think that's the bit that kind of bothers me. And it lives, so much in founders and in people that I speak to. It's like, should we do more performance or more brand? For Coat, their performance and brand marketing are about objectives, not about medium. So back to what I said before about brand being the most important asset that our business has, looking forward when we sell the business, that's what's going to make it really valuable. But actually our brand is the loudest in performance marketing channels. So our brand has been born and raised in Instagram, in Facebook, in all these performance channels, if you want to call it that. But that's just because that's where most people see it. So I struggle with this idea that they're two separate things. For us, we talk about performant marketing. So every bit of marketing that we do across the whole funnel has to work. And I think there's a danger of putting things in the brand camp that just either can't be measured, or we think we need to do, like PR, we think we need to do this, but we can't really measure it. And that's where people talk about brand marketing, and that's rubbish. I think brand is how you show up everywhere. So I remember getting annoyed about that. I do get a little bit annoyed about that, because I think it's misleading sometimes.
100%. I think I like the position you're taking on it, but I do want to dive in further. So when you're running your campaigns, and let's say, I don't know, you might be doing a certain campaign that's not directly pushing people to buy, or do you not get involved in those sorts of campaigns?
Oh, no, absolutely we do. We did TV. Channel 4 is one of our investors. We've done channels with various different objectives.
So what would be your view in terms of the argument often goes like, well, you've got to put loads of money into loads of activations that you'll never measure, but that will probably feed the performance marketing down the line. what's your view when you're considering a marketing campaign that isn't easily measurable, or like even just down to like meta ads where you're running an ad that's way more like engagement focused?
Yeah.
You know, maybe having some influencers using your paint, or that's probably not the best example actually. Maybe just kind of like aspirational type content. There's not like, here's my products, this is how much it costs. Buy it now. What's your view in how you, from a data perspective and a measuring perspective, how do you manage that within your business?
I think that is, I was sort of thinking about it as you were saying it. I think I talked about storytelling before, right? So you can't just, let's use the other extreme of just being performance marketing. If you haven't got a storyteller, you haven't got something to say, that's not going to work. So you can't say we're going to do one without the other. You've got to work out how to do them both in a way that makes sense together. So when you said, do you do campaigns that aren't directly selling paint? I suppose no is the overall answer to that question, because everything should have an objective within our marketing strategy of doing that. It just depends to what degree it's top or bottom of funnel. And I genuinely think, and again, sample size of one here, but a business our size, a business probably double our size, shouldn't be spending on above the line brand, marketing in channels that you can't measure. Like that I just can't get my head around why we would do that. He says, after just saying Channel 4 is one of our investors and we did TV. So that has a slight nuance because we didn't pay for it.
I'm going to leave this office and I'm going to see a bus go past me with just the word coat and nothing else on it, aren't I? I think
it's the world is much bigger than us. So for us right now, telling stories in more direct response channels is where we'll be probably for a little while.
And how have you found that? You mentioned like early days, you running some Facebook ads, couple of pound budgets that would probably run like miles ahead of you, and you'd be like, this is amazing. Compared to now, oh my God, what was our cost per acquisition gone up for this week? Tell me about that acquisition journey. Obviously, DTC has been a massive part of your journey so far. How have you kept acquisition sustainable throughout the challenging times that we see in e-commerce, whilst protecting that precious margin that we spoke about? Yeah, no, it's valid, and I think it's been such a journey over 4 years back to like you say, the original few pounds spent on long tail Google or Meta, and really low CAC because we're coming out the back of COVID. So I think we've been on a whole journey with that. I'm trying to think of because we are, we're sustainably acquiring customers now, and we have good repeating cohorts, which makes a huge difference. You don't have that at the start. So I suppose that gives us a bit more to play with. But the way our business works is samples first. So customers order samples of paint before they order the paint. So we always run this kind of call to action of get samples, and then we'll use CRM to kind of move people through or retention campaigns. But yeah, CAC's been up and down. It's been coming down probably for the last 2 years. And I think I chalk a lot of that up to the marketing mix and marketing strategy that I talked about before. So not just plowing everything into bottom of funnel Facebook, but actually doing things like TV, doing some direct mail, building stories through collaborations and kind of celeb and influencer campaigns. So I think it's a pretty broad marketing mix. It's all performant. Like I said before, we wouldn't just throw money at something we don't have it. But that combination of that and the returning cohorts and word of mouth is a huge channel for us. That combination has finally sort of come together over the last year to give us a relatively predictable CAC, I'd say. The first 3 years was, wild, all over the place, too high. You hear it a lot, I think, and you work out why. And a lot of D2C brands, or some D2C brands, actually take a really hard look at their business model at that point and go, is this CAC going to come down? Because if not, we either can't sustain it through the margins, or the market's not big enough, whatever it is. And they look at alternative distribution and kind of change that. Whereas I think we doubled down in the segment, and it's kind of worked for us so far. Why was it so expensive to acquire customers in your first few years?
I think like any brand, it's that storytelling piece. You've got to really you talked about how big the market is. It is. Established is the other word I'd use. So you've got all these brands with a lot more trust and confidence and history than what you've got. So I think your job is really hard in those early days. You slap a website up and go, this is us guys, we're here, but actually no one knows who you are, and they're digging around looking for examples of who you are, whether it's reviews, whether it's collaborations, Instagram, whatever it is. You don't have any of that. You don't have user-generated content. You don't have any of the trust signals that more established brands have. So why would people take a risk on you, I guess, if you think about it as a consumer?
Customers don't want to paint their houses twice, right? In the short term.
We know this now, and it's such a big and a small decision, right? Because you could go, I can paint it if I don't like it. But a lot of people get really het up about color choice and don't want to get it wrong. This is like a big thing. So getting them to choose a brand that's unknown, I think that's probably where we're now benefiting from, tons of reviews out there, word of mouth, all of those things coming together to mitigate that trust factor. And the product is great. And we've now got years of people knowing that. So I think in terms of CAC, you just have to work. You have to work really, really hard at the beginning. And when we model, we're really cautious about like business modeling and financials. We're really cautious about saying CAC's going to be lower because, it's a punt. I think a lot of the time as you scale, it actually goes up. So you've got to do something else, either margin, returning customers, something else to balance it out.
I think it's interesting. I have my own kind of views around the brand versus performance type debates, and I think most of the time what people are actually talking about is top of funnel, bottom of funnel building.
True, yeah.
In a way,
yeah.
In my view, and it can be comparable across even my business in terms of how easy is it to sell at the bottom of the funnel? Mm-hmm. And actually, this is probably what we're asking ourselves when we're looking at cost of acquisition costs. Is that we're saying, right, so there's a big movement of cost of acquisition is so high and it's sustained high, it's getting higher, oh my goodness. But actually what we need to ask ourselves is, why is it taking algorithms like Meta so much to get somebody to buy? That's the question. If you'd walked out into the middle of the street and you took your paint to someone and went, buy this paint, it's luxury and looks beautiful, done. Most people are probably going to say no. But if that same person has seen you a little bit online, seen some of their favourite influencers, seen you on the telly, and then you go and ask that same person, I was actually, all right, then I'll do it. And actually, sometimes we can get so caught up in that end phase conversion targeted campaign that's Meta doesn't work anymore. Really, it's actually it's a multi-touch approach in
100%.
Is that something, and that probably explains why years 1 to 3 CAC's expensive, because it's a harder sell. Whereas once you hit year 4, maybe, that's all that hard graft of telling on how great you are, that's compounded, and now people are like, all right, let's take a punt.
It's getting there, but I think the mistake would be to think that it's kind of going to keep doing that. I think you hit, I don't know when we're going to get there. I think you hit a spot of, then it's the market size and how much of that level of CAC you can sustain. So I think the first bit's really hard. You get some level of normalization, and then it's about planning where that's going to go. But you mentioned kind of channels and stuff. We've never just done, Facebook is the obvious one. I think it's part of the reason why Coat sought VC funding. So after about 9 months to a year in, we did our first institutional round, and I think that was realization there from Rob and I. We were going, we can probably run this as a lifestyle business, and we can, you can get so far and probably pay ourselves and get there. We believe Coat deserved to be more than that, but we knew by that point what CACs looked like, what marketing channels we needed to invest in. Anything from, the turning up digitally to pop-up stores, design events, there's lots of other things in there that need to be paid for, that ultimately have a payoff, which we're now hitting, ish, in terms of kind of break even. But we did the maths at that point and went, if we want Coat to be big, we need funding, and that's kind of where that discussion landed.
And even now, how are you making that decision on budget splits for your marketing? where it's like direct kind of performance stuff that's really easy measurable compared to pop-ups and stuff like that. And are you kind of just taking that as it comes and as opportunity arrives, or is that a very measured approach in your marketing strategy?
I'd love to say it's measured. I mean, it is, because we're both very sort of rational people. So there's always a plan. We very rarely spend outside a plan, but things like, celebrity relationships, that's a good one. Some of those that you pay for, so like high level ambassador things, there's not so much of the guarantee to results with those things. You model it and you go, okay, we think we're going to get this, but you have to sometimes go with your gut on that kind of thing within reason, as part of a mix. So if you get too hung up on trying to measure every little bit of thing, you never do anything. So I think if logic tells you, this is the logic we always go back to, rightly or wrongly, is we're charging nearly £60 for a tin of paint. It's great paint, and Rob will tell you all day long why it's great paint and all the stuff that's in it and all the stuff that customers won't listen to because it's very technical. But if we're charging that for a paint, we need to bolster that. We need to back that up with some kind of credible marketing efforts, and that isn't just click here to get a sample on Facebook. It has to be a lot more than that. So I think that's kind of how we justify it in our head. It's more of a pragmatic approach of, if the budget is £100, it's not £100 going to Meta. It's £20 going to the story to create the content, and another £20 going to whatever else it is, and breaking it down in that way. So some science, some art, but mixture.
And over the last 4 years, has there been any campaigns that you've run across your marketing, or any initiatives, or, to be honest, anything that's really been a hopeful growth driver for your business that have just absolutely failed on their arse?
Yes. Direct mail hasn't really worked for us.
Okay.
I think, just putting it out there. So cold prospecting via direct mail, that was one of our, it makes sense on paper, because you're like, oh, home movers, they paint, like they buy a lot of paint. We know what postcodes people buy in. We'll kind of, it felt very ticked our left brain boxes. We're
Too
like,
perfect.
Okay, this is great. This
Too
feels
right.
like we should do this. Dropping colour cards on people's doorsteps like the minute they move in. So yeah, on paper, amazing. Results not amazing. So 10 times the normal CAC, not so much of an uplift in kind of LTV. So yeah, that's probably the one that stands out as I think because we were so excited about it on paper, and then it just was a bit of a wet fish. I keep picking it back up every now and again, going, this really feels like it should work. What did we do wrong? Was it the print media? What was it that we did wrong? It's
always the obvious ones that never fucking work, isn't it? Yeah. Always. It's like, this should work on paper. I'm literally showing it to the right people at the right time, in exactly all the right variables. But then you forget probably other factors, like they're also really busy, and they've also probably got posts left over from all the other people that used to live in the flat they've just moved into. And then you're like, shit, this doesn't work.
There's something in there that doesn't work. But yeah, I still throw it around every now and again, going, we should think about that. But I think that's the only one that's really fallen kind of on the negative side. We've done things like pop-up stores before, mixed results, but I go back to that default position of, we're online and we're showing up in real life, and that has some benefit. So yeah, I wouldn't write that one off. We did some weird partnerships at the beginning of the business, to your point about how the brand has developed. Urban Outfitters was our first collab. So we did a paint range for them. And thinking back now, what those colours were, like really quite lurid orange and green and things like that, we wouldn't do it now. So okay, we know more about customers, we know more about a product and brand positioning, that we wouldn't have done that. I don't regret doing it, because when it's, within the first year, we were like, oh my God, this massive brand wants to do something. But it's just how you learn, and we wouldn't have learnt. Sounds so obvious that people don't buy loads of really lime green paint, funnily enough, from
also,
Urban Outfitters.
But also, if that had worked, you'd have been like, oh my God, we took a punt on a random retailer and it's absolutely paying off, you know? So, and there's probably examples you can't even remember where you've taken these little small punts all the time to see what sticks, right?
Probably. I mean, loads. Yeah, you have to do it. Otherwise you won't be able to tick it off in your head.
So the brand has obviously been super important in the journey, creating that lifestyle, that inspirational positioning that people can really take on board and embody. How is that really, how are you delivering that experience? Because obviously you don't have an in-person store that people can come in and your staff can't actually physically say that. So obviously that comes to the online experience. So what thought has gone into that experience from ad all the way through to like CRM emails and so on?
Loads. I think it's constantly something we throw around because we are online and that's our model. Again, going back to that customer trust thing, I think you have to show up. You know, we show up on their doorstep as some sheets of painted A5 paper, right? That's kind of how we turn up. So how that looks, I mean, it's so micro. I don't know if it's, but like quality of the card, how's the print, how's the kind of finish on the samples, what's the message in there, like what are the follow-up email flows like? All of that has had quite a lot of thought put into it. And at the start of the business, I'm not saying I regret doing this because I don't, but we were so picky about then, and we picked really premium suppliers for everything and all that kind of stuff. And over time, when you start going, oh, our margin's not as good as it should be, you start thinking about picking that stuff away. But we haven't. We've never compromised on the physical product. If anything, we'd go, I'd rather spend less on marketing than take away our physical touch points, because that is, to your point, the only time the customer really experiences it. And the end user, most of the time, will experience the paint as well. So you've got the opportunity to... I mean, this is a bit bougie. We don't do this anymore, but we used to spray the paint boxes. So when you opened it, we used Diptyque. They were a much smaller business, but like that kind of visceral reaction to opening a box of paint and it smelling incredible. You know, you used to see that on social all the time. People going, "Oh my God, this paint smells nice." It's not something that people expect, but things like that. So we do put a lot of thought into that kind of stuff, and I think you have to, because it's when the customers experience your product and who you are.
100%. And actually, has that gone down to like the design of the buying experience as well on your store itself?
Yeah. So we built the store using Shopify, like a lot of people. Yeah. There's a custom front end and kind of Shopify back end. But yeah, we're all about, my last job was at Carwow, so very kind of digitally focused marketplace business, a lot about performance optimization. I ran product team there for a little bit. So I've always been very hot on that kind of website experience, and then the associated email experience as well off the back of it. Carwow was very good at CRM and bringing that in. So yeah, that on-site experience, how that hands off to offline, and even delivery partners and stuff like that, you know, how that universe works. That's our job. Like, we're online, we have to do all of that incredibly well, otherwise what are we doing? So yeah, that network, that infrastructure is a big part of everything, really. And
you said something quite interesting earlier, which I really want to tap into, is around recurring customers or customer retention. Yeah. Presumably people aren't painting their houses every week like you'd love them to.
Yeah.
However, you mentioned that actually that returning customer cohort is becoming more and more important to Coat. So tell me more about how you create that recurring revenue model within a business that maybe isn't traditionally so frequent.
It's really high, our return rate. So
really?
It's not something that people expect. And it's not something we expected either, necessarily, because you have that view that, you know, you do a room and then move on. But that's probably the biggest struggle that we had in the early days with investors on the investment side of things, is convincing people that this category can create brand loyalty. So even saying it out loud, you know, it's unbelievable. But now I think we're 4 years old. We can show those cohorts, and we can show how people are doing it.
And I bet that really changes your acquisition strategy in terms of
massively
doubling down on existing customers, or and being less bothered about always filling that tank of new customers consistently. And I think, you know, growth now is more challenging than it probably ever has been in the history of e-commerce, right? You mentioned to me before we started filming around how actually sometimes growth doesn't always mean doing more, but actually sometimes doing less but doing it better.
Sure.
What's been some times where actually you've just taken a step back and go, whoa, hang on, before we move on to something else, are we doing this right? Are we absolutely capitalizing on every potential sale we can within our existing way of doing things?
I think it links to what you just said about returning customers. It's probably the most pertinent example I've got, where we were probably a couple of years into the business before we really clocked onto that repeat rate, and we were doing nothing to nurture it. So case in point of going, we should really have focused earlier on retention than we did. And by retention, I don't mean, I think there's a misconception that you can just, we've got this customer, they bought from us once, we've got them. Actually, with paint, you're kind of probably back in the market. You do one room and then you're back to the color charts. So ours is coming out, Farrow Moore's is coming, everyone's is coming out again. So we definitely haven't got those customers, but we know them. And in terms of, we know what they bought previously, we can kind of work on having that relationship with them. So I think that's one example of where we needed to do less new customer acquisition, more nurture, beyond just I'll send an email and they'll buy from us again. Like that's not good enough. It's outbound customer service, calling. There's lots of things in there. So I think that's one. But we did a bunch of other stuff, like we launched in France when it was seemed like a good idea. We just raised some VC money. We were like, right, growth means new markets, and actually,
where's next?
It really didn't, and it was part. I think it was part of the journey and part of the sort of expected path at that point. It's maybe quite different now, but you would raise money and you'd build a team, you'd go international, you'd all that sort of stuff. I think we're kind of almost on the opposite side of that now, where we've gone, actually we can build this business in a segment really focused on what we're good at and what we know we're good at, without trying to liaise with a French production house with one French speaker in the team and staff up customer service with it. So we made that, I'm not going to call it a mistake, because we did some good revenue out there, but I think closing that off and going, right, back to the UK, our entire supply chain's in the UK, we're keeping it very, very tight. That doing less has meant we can really double down on the opportunities with returning customers, with a bunch of other things, without feeling like the team of 12 is overwhelmed. And that's another important point. We're a relatively small team, but when you're a founder or an ambitious person, you think you can do lots of things. And it's classic. Rob and I is always like, oh yeah, we can do that. And it's always 10 times bigger than what you think it's going to be when you say it out loud.
How was that moment when you're like, we've got to stop doing this and we've got to close off this strategy in France and double down our focus where we know it's working? Was that a hard moment?
It was hard, and I can't take entire credit for it. I think we had a habit of letting things go on a little bit longer than maybe they should have done, because you want to make it work, right? So we were doing about, I think we probably did about 500,000 in France. So it's like material business that we built over there. And so much effort had gone into setting up local production so we can make in France, we could ship in the way we do it now. It's all made to order, shipped directly to the customer. So like loads of effort had gone into that, translating the website, hiring a country manager, like all this effort goes in. And I think the more the more you put into it, the harder it clearly becomes to cut it off, even though you should, because you're like, okay, there's one more month, let's just try this and I'll try this. So that went on for a little while. We got a chairman in the business probably about 18 months ago now, a guy called Tony. He's chaired lots of e-commerce business, really successful e-commerce businesses, and exited or facilitated the exit of some of those businesses. So he came in and actually was a great second, third pair of eyes, going, I can see kind of what you're doing here. You don't need all this stuff. And Rob and I were like, oh, we need that. We really, in our cart, it wasn't a surprise, but I think it took that shove to go, yeah, fine, we need to cut this off. So
hindsight is a beautiful thing,
isn't it? Just so, yeah, it's and actually having that chairman, having that other person that wasn't one of us, was great. It really helped us challenge a lot of our kind of internalized thinking a little bit.
I think it's also the emotional detachment from it as well. Sometimes it's 100%. Like, your chairman hasn't had the labour of love of bloody getting paint into France and
Exactly.
whatever.
Yeah.
He's just like, guys, this is not working. Stop it.
Yeah.
Which sometimes as a founder can be, or
Yeah.
anyway, when you've been in the trenches, so to speak, it can be a real tough one to.
It was great. It was tough, but I would also say like it felt like a bit of a release as well.
Yeah.
It's kind of a permission thing, which is weird to say, but you're like, oh yeah, we really should, and then we just did it. It felt like you had that validation on that gut feeling that you had, and then someone else going, yeah, it's a good idea to do that. So it has a weird balance of feeling like those two things.
And I think there's, in any business, there's going to be things that go so well, and doubly down, there's going to be something that doesn't go well, right?
Yeah,
and,
right.
And the learnings you take from all the failings is probably going to propel you even more into your next chapter. Well, look, Rob, thank you so much for joining me on CharleChats, the Ecommerce Podcast. It's been a pleasure to learn about your story.
Thank you.
I'm so excited to see where you guys are going, and I have no doubt I'll be buying my first tin of paint from you very soon.
Thank you very much.
But please stay in touch, and I can't wait to see where you guys go.
Nice one.
Thanks, Rob. Thank you so much for joining us on episode 18. What a story. Challenging an industry that's been fairly untapped for so many years. Please follow us on socials, and we'll be back again real soon.